bookshelf.
No, my new fake bookshelf.
He said, "I'm having Dale Saran on," and someone wrote in the comments, "Hey, that's the guy with all the books in the back."
So he's like, yeah, the guy with all the fake books. That might be the perfect. I didn't even know it. Like that might be the perfect, symbolism for me. Fake books behind me.
That could be a good name for a podcast. Fake Books Podcast.
Fake bookshelf. The Fake Bookshelf Podcast. I like it.
You're in Kansas?
I am.
Can't believe I know someone who lives in Kansas.
I know. And it's funny. I just came back from Minnesota. Went to Minnesota last weekend. Have you ever spent much time up in Minneapolis, St. Paul?
No, I don't think so. I think I've driven through there. Is that this? Are there two Minneapolises? Like, is that one of those cities like that where they got like two on the river or something?
Yes. Mississippi River is right there. And so St. Paul, they're called the Twin Cities. That's why on their baseball uniforms, they have like a C and a T. It's the Twin Cities of St. Paul and Minneapolis.
And ironically, Kansas City's the same way?
Yes. A bunch of Midwest cities are, in fact.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, go on. How was it up there?
Interesting. It's like I think you would dig it. It's like Portland, except in Minnesota. It's just like Portland. I can't believe how much it reminded me of Portland.
I can't believe Minneapolis is one of those weird places. You know, back in the day, Greg used to say this thing. It's like, yeah, we need liberals so we can have theater and pesto. Yeah. And that was the cool thing about Portland, you know, before it got just crazy, overrun by drug addicts. But it was cool because there were all these young people there trying innovative thing. Like there would just be a store that all they sold were rulers. And you're like, shit, I didn't know you could make a business out of just a store.
Like the pencil store. Like
yes, like a pencil store.
You know?
Yeah, or just weird shit, or like a cool comic book store. Just some like and I when you say it's just like Portland, that's how I imagine it. But I can't figure out Minneapolis, or I can't figure out Minnesota as a state. Is it libtarded, or is it cool country folk that and homesteaders? Like, what's going on over there?
Yes, and in fact, it's much. The answer is yes. It's both of those things. So I know a lot of people who live in Minnesota. Number one, first of all, let me say this about Minnesota. If you want to talk what Minnesota is, it is the number one high school hockey state in the country.
Okay.
And you can say like, okay, what does that mean? But that conveys something in the same way that if I told you like a certain state was the number one state for CrossFit affiliates, you'd go, okay, there's something,
When I think of hockey, I think of obsessive parents. It's like one of those sports, right?
Well, it's because it requires, the nature of the sport, all the gear. And then it's very, very common, like hockey parents, many of them, all of them will have memories of having to take their kids to practice. You get, when you're little, you get the shittiest ice times. And so you're playing at 5 a.m. in the morning. So your parents are getting up at 4 o'clock to stick you and all your shit. So it's basically your parents have to want to do it. Like this isn't just dropping it off of jujitsu.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a brutal culture, like sort of like a women's gymnastics. Like the parents are fucking crazy.
Yep.
The coaches are crazy. And it's just completely just insane.
I would say this. I wouldn't say it's parents are crazy in this sense. The sort of typical joke in South Boston was about when did your father first get in a fight in the stands at your hockey practice, or whatever.
Wow.
When you were a kid, like what was the first time? How old were you when your dad punched another dude in the rink? Like
just an assumption it happened.
Right. But the truth of it is like that didn't. The parents and the people around hockey. I was trying to explain this the other day to somebody, like talking about the sport. There's my wife, and we were in Minnesota talking about hockey with some of her friends. She's like, "Yeah, it's a little." She said the same thing. I had this like image of people losing their minds, and I go, "It's always been this way." And let me give you the best explanation of this. You can find these old grainy like 1920s videos of the Boston Bruins, the newly formed Boston Bruins, like in the 20s, playing in the Montreal Maroons or whatever before they were the Canadiens. And you can see the fans were all dressed in like overcoats, ties, suits. Everybody's got their hats. and the rink is the benches, like the benches are here and like the fans are right. There's no plexiglass. You know what I mean? None of that. Like the players are right. And you could like, it is routine. You watch those old videos and you will see fans and players fucking fighting. And I mean, like, on the reg, you will see like, you're like, hey, they're going crazy here at the Montreal Forum, and you can watch like, you can see players and these guys are, turned around and they're swinging at the fans and there's sticks in the air and people, crowds, the police are getting involved. I mean, it's always been that way. It's part of the sport. You've got, whenever you give young men in a competitive endeavor, you give them an implement in their hand, they will use it as a weapon on the opposing players. And so whether it's lacrosse or hockey or me when I was doing that crazy night shit, you give people weapons out there in a sporting environment, man, and the temperature is going to get crazy. And the fans will get increasingly incensed over, watching guys doing shitty things with sticks to each other or whatever.
My three boys love each other. The second someone has a stick in their hand, which is every day, I'll be like, hey, don't hit each other with that. Someone gets hit. You know what I mean? Someone gets hit.
I was just going to say, everything I just said to you, you're like, yes. As a father of three boys, all the same age, you're like, yes.
Someone always gets it. Hey, Minnesota has a, it is, I don't know if it's more corrupt than any other state in the country, but because it's been under the magnifying glass because of George Floyd, it is insanely, I mean, I've looked way into it. The governor's corrupt. The attorney general's corrupt. They have all sorts of gangbangers as attorneys, as cops. How is that state like beyond fucked up? I mean, Tim Walz is a fucking psychopath. What did I actually saw something here about him the other day. Go ahead.
I drove up and I've driven through all 50, but it's a different thing to like just even stay somewhere, even for a weekend. You know what I mean? Just get a vibe for a city.
Yeah.
And so we spent like 4 days there and we went to a St. Paul Saints game. So minor league baseball game was great. The stadium in downtown is great. They got an awesome farmers market, all kinds of great shit. So St. Paul was very nice. And I was asking people, like, what's the difference between St. Paul and Minneapolis? And they said, St. Paul is more for people in its 30s and Minneapolis might be more for people in their 20s. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it. It's the older, more subdued, St. Paul has the hills, the bluffs.
Like this is the National Guard being called out, keeping people in their homes during COVID.
Yeah.
These are the same people who are freaking out that the National Guard is being called out when cities are burning. Again,
I can't believe it's all happening. I can't believe it happened. We still haven't had a reckoning. I was telling somebody this the other day.
No, we have not. We
still haven't had the reckoning. It's why my cases are a little weird. Like we're in this transition phase. When I first started suing over the vaccine mandate.
Look at this, Dale. This is the fucking National Guard in suburbia telling people to go inside their homes,
locking
so
them
they don't catch COVID.
Healthy people.
Meanwhile, at the same time this is happening, in Texas, they had the largest indoor boxing match with no max. It was Canelo versus someone with 60,000 people packed into a rink. I mean, this is Tim Walz's Minnesota.
The Arizona Attorney General filed a lawsuit in the middle of the pandemic to stop some kind of mandate related thing. And the crux of his argument, I think it was Mark Brnovich, when he was Attorney General of Arizona, and the lawsuit was pretty good. And he was pointing out that, like, hey, you can't be saying like you got to lock people in their homes or we can't have schools. And you've got people, again, this is Arizona, you've got people pouring across the fucking border who are completely unvaccinated, and not only not vaccinated, they're coming from places with rampant communicable diseases, and
they're not even being asked to be vaccinated. Right, and the kids are being put into our schools by the thousands every day.
So there was this crazy thing that we went through where there were these stated reasons for taking people's rights, and And those stated reasons were clearly bullshit because at the same time that you had, as you point out, the Minnesota National Guard, forcing people into their homes by threat of force. I mean, that's an armed fucking, company of armed people ordering you into your house. And at the same time they're doing that, they're importing people from Haiti or Somalia or whatever. And those people, with way higher rates of infectious disease and, very suspect hygiene practices and, whatever. And I don't mean that about personal, just public hygiene.
I'm a tax-paying citizen, and my kids can't go to school. I couldn't go to the grocery store. I couldn't go to restaurants because in the Biden administration had me on, if you weren't vaccinated, they had this statement that basically you could be considered an extremist.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, 8,000 to 10,000 people come across the border every day and are given money, no vaccine, and a social security number. I mean, it's fucking.
Yeah. So there's
how are they even arguing it? I don't.
So here's the point. This is what you have to understand what's going on. There's a really, really interesting phenomena here, which is, and I said it a while ago because I felt it, but I couldn't fully articulate what it meant in the details and the specifics. And I said it on Brett Weinstein's Dark Horse podcast when I first was trying to get an injunction to stop the military vaccine mandate. And it was, eventually the American people are going to have to wake up to the fact that their country's at war. And here's what's going on. Imagine if we were just talking, right? And we were out and a guy shoves you and you're and your drink kind of slops, right? You go, all right. And he doesn't say anything. You just you get shoved, you look, and the guy's not looking at you. He acts like nothing happened. How many more shoves will you let him get away with before you throw that drink in his face? And so what's going on?
Or leave.
Right. Or do something else. So what's going on?
And that's what they're doing in California. They're leaving.
Yeah. What's going on is that there's a significant chunk of this country, and call it, I won't say it's the entire Democratic Party. I don't think that's true, but there's a big chunk of people within the Democratic Party that is filled with people who are, call them whatever you want, subversives. I don't know, use whatever line you want, but they are actively hate you and want you dead. And people don't kind of continue to pretend that's not happening because they can't believe that they're just incapable of dealing with that reality, that there are other people out there for no reason. It was a hard thing as a kid. I remember the first time I encountered that, hatred for no reason. You're like, I didn't do anything to this guy. Somebody you're like, wow, what the hell? And it's the hardest thing to get over. And you eventually have to.
What do you mean it's the hardest thing to get over, to accept that that's happening?
Yes. Because you have to come to grips with the reality. There's another person out there. If you're a good person, there's a certain level of you have to get past. We all project onto the world ourselves in many ways. We kind of assume at some level everybody's like us because we assume I'm normal. I'm not crazy, right? I'm not a lunatic. So most people, a normal person, must think the way I do, at least for the most part. And some,
I'm not a lunatic. I'm not racist. I'm not homophobic. I'm not transphobic. I'm none of that shit. I'm not a misogynist. I'm not like any of those things. Yeah.
At least not more so than anyone else,
Right.
And at least I'm at least aware of my limitations. I don't lie to myself, or at least I try not to, So, but the interesting thing here is there are people who are actively working to, we have, you can't import. Joe Biden made it clear, he wanted the border open. He did everything he could to signal the border is open. And you can look at the numbers. You can pull the stats. The U.S. military, the entire federal armed forces, plus the National Guard. Okay, the United States military is 2.2 million, and I believe that's 1.3 million active duty, 900 reservists. I don't know. I got the numbers around there somewhere. I was just looking at them the other day, but if you add the National Guard or whatever, we have maybe 2 to 3 million people under arms. Okay. The no bullshit tanks, everybody, 2 to 3 million US members operate all that shit. And we let in something like, I don't know, by conservative estimates, you can find 20 million. You can find people like, no, it's 27 million. You can find people, oh, it's only 13 million.
Yeah.
But whatever number you want to use, you know, we have let in something like the population of a number of states, or, you know, 8% of the US population.
It's like the VAERS report. If they're saying 8,000 a day, you know it's 25,000 a day.
Right. And so the number, I've seen some realistic numbers recently. People are like, hey man, it's like it's over 25 million people are here illegally. And that is to say that there are people living in this country who have they're just here on the dirt. And in 25 million people in your country, man, is an occupying fucking army. You can slice that however you want, but 25 million people, that's 10 times the entire US military, fully armed, standing in formation. You know what I mean? And like,
that's the whole state of California. That's the whole state of California almost. I think we're at 40 million.
Yeah, it's a huge, I mean, it's a massive amount of people. And so the they are, I think what's going on is the part of the Trump administration is trying to show people, in many ways, this is all provoked. And I've heard people talking about the, you know, the riots in LA and shit. And it's eerily like 92, if you remember the LA riots. But the difference now is like, there's one thing to having a segment of your population that's unhappy. It's a very different thing to have people who aren't here, have no legal status. Like imagine, I mean, could you imagine if 25 million Americans just suddenly decided to plop themselves into China and then started rioting and waving American flags? What, like,
I mean, the truth is,
would just be wiped out.
Yeah, 90% of the countries on planet Earth, if they had 25 million immigrants who went into upheaval, the country would fall.
Oh yeah. Most countries would be done. You'd only have to be able to accept. So, but pick a number, like forget 25 million and just think about it in terms of percentages. 25 million people. Let's just call it 25 million. It's a nice round number. As a proportion of the U.S., that's the U.S. population is roughly 325 million. So this is crazy that I'm going to be able to do this, but that's exactly 1/13 of the population.
Yeah.
Because 1/12 would be 300 million. 25 million 12 times is 300 million. So 325 is 1/13. So which is roughly 7 to 8%.
Hey, by the way, I just want to say this real quick. You're a country of immigrants. That entire statement is bullshit because the entire planet is a country. The entire planet is a planet of immigrants.
Listen,
that is nothing. That's set in the context and relevance of just it being easy to say.
Look, kids, solipsism. This is what's known as sophistry. I just want everybody to know that statement. You're a country of immigrants. It's intended to convey something sort of sub silentio, like you are a country of immigrants. Okay, it's a statement. It's sort of, it's not even really true. It's
when you come here, you're supposed to take a vow to the country, and when you become a citizen, and you're also, there's a demand that you assimilate.
Yeah. Well, here's the part that people miss. You are a country of immigrants. Period. Both true and false. The more important thing is you have to. There's the liberal kind of conceit is collapsing. And at the heart of the liberal conceit is that part of it includes, whether it's, you know, from the Enlightenment philosophers or just modern liberalism. Part of the idea is like this blank slate notion that we're all just human biomass, that we're just all indistinguishable. And that is so obviously false and so clearly a stupid thing. You know, there's a reason. Look, the United States is not, and this is sort of the other part of that neoliberal kind of conceit, is like somehow the United States is magic dirt. Like that, you know, people from countries that are living in, like in Afghanistan, for example, where I've spent a good deal of time, so I can talk about it because it's like the fourth world. Do you think that Afghanistan is living in fourth world shitholery because it's the dirt? Like they've got natural gas reserves, you know what I mean? It's a beautiful place. It would be the world's best adventure tourism place. The Hindu Kush Mountains are the footsteps to the Himalayas. Kabul used to be a booming in the 70s.
Dude, 50 years ago, Beirut was the most amazing place on planet Earth.
Considered the Paris of the Middle East.
Right. Beautiful waters, beautiful swimming, clean, exotic people, intellectuals, poets, artists. Yeah,
and then
great. Yeah, melting pot.
Yes. And then they started tacking them to lampposts. So listen, culture matters. This is the part that no one wants to hear. You can choose. There are bad ideas. You know, Richard Weaver's ideas have consequences. Cultures can believe in stupid shit, and it can, like, for example, let me give you this is a relevant example to what we're talking about. In the Middle East, for those who haven't spent a lot of time there, under Islam, and if you haven't read the Holy Quran, I would encourage you to do so, just for your own mind broadening. But if you're not familiar with it, or the Hadith, which is the traditions of the Prophet and those who traveled with him in the early part of his hijrah, if you're not familiar with any of that, let me just point out that one of the things that came out of the practices in that area was keeping money in the family, and that means cousins marrying. And so you have, like, there was for a long time, a report, and a lot of the stuff has been muted. You can't get this information. It's widely known by people who work close to it. But for example, Pakistanis represent something like, I don't know what it is now, but it used to be like 5% of the British population. But they made up like 35 or 40 or 50% of birth defects. And that's because first cousins, they intermarry. And there have been geneticists who have looked at it and said that there are significant chunks of the Muslim population that the gene pool's been irreparably harmed by all the cousin fucking. And I can tell you that when I was there, I had an interpreter, our best interpreter. The guy spoke 5-6 languages, wonderful, wonderful guy. I think he made it out and got here, so I'm very happy for that. I love him more than I love most of you. I went to war with him. You know, I risked my life with that guy.
With who? With Glenn Beck?
No, with one of my interpreters.
Oh.
Well, and yet he was telling me, I found out he was getting married. And so I was like, hey, he came to tell me, I heard about it from the other interpreters. They're like, yeah, he's going to go on leave. He's getting married. And so I was asking him, I was teasing him about it. You know, I mean, I ran the 35 to 40 interpreters. I taught them English. I was in charge of them at our base in Afghanistan. So I used to teach them English twice a week. And so I'm talking to him. I go, hey, so who's the lucky gal? And he says, oh, I know her, you know. And I'm like, oh, that's wonderful. I go, you know, and I figured out it's probably an arranged marriage. And he says, yeah, my parents, you know, her parents and all that. And he goes, I knew her when we were younger. I knew her a little girl. And I was like, oh my God. He goes, yeah, we played together. And he go, oh, that's amazing. He goes, yeah, her parents, it's my uncle. Her dad is my dad's brother.
Wow.
And I go, yo, like, hey, my man. I go, listen. I go, you know, I used to tell these guys all kinds of crazy shit to blow their mind. I said, you know, where I'm from, I said, and they knew I was a lawyer. I told them earlier, I was like, Zawakilium. It gave me a little mystique with them.
Yeah.
And so I told him, and he goes, I go, in where I was originally got barred in Maine, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. You wouldn't be allowed to marry your first cousin. It's against the law.
Is it against the law in the United States?
In most states, yeah. And in Maine, they have, like a lot of states on the edge, what they do is you're not allowed to marry first cousins, but unless in Maine, you could get a test from a geneticist, and they can look. You get Mr. and Mrs. or presumptive Mr. and Mrs. who want to get married, their first cousins. And I was telling him this, you can have a genetic test and they'll look at it and then they'll go, oh, okay. We know which genes that if you have certain setup in your DNA, you're too close, like you're going to wind up with, you have a very, very high chance of birth defects, or the baby's going to be born, you know, dead, or, you know, there's bad things. And so you can get a waiver if you can get this test done, and they go, oh, look, you know, whatever. And it works out. So I explained that to him and he goes, I swear, he goes, just like this. He goes, oh, this is Americans. This is why you are so smart, sir. Your people are geniuses. And so I go, okay, well, and he says, it explains why so many of the kids in my family, why they have, you know, we have the problems and they don't live and all that. And so they can see that they're having, like, you know, retarded kids, and they're just gonna have to let them die or whatever. Like, all of that horror is happening. And it's the result of a practice because the you know, Islam encourages it. And so you can you can have shitty ideas. So when you say like oh,
fucking your cousins.
Yeah, right. And you can say like, oh, you're a nation of immigrants. And by the way, this has been proven. Forget you think I'm picking on the Muslims. This is what brought down the Habsburg Empire and what happened amongst the Tudors, when there was this idea that, hey, royal blood, purity, all that shit. And the fact of the matter is that genetic diversity is what you need. So in any event, that's a long way to get to, like, you can believe stupid shit. So just saying we're a country of immigrants, hurt is a fucking meaningless, useless, stupid thing to say. You don't add anything to the conversation with that. Like, what are you trying to say? Say what you're going to say. You know what I mean? Have a thesis. What are you saying? Hey, you guys should let anybody in and you should have open borders and fuck you and just deal with it? Or what's the point you're trying to make? Just don't be snide and try and not be willing to say what's on your mind. You know what I mean? And hide behind glib sloganeering. The fact is it matters, and you don't need to look here. There's plenty of historical examples, including Rome,
It matters who the immigrants are also and how.
Right. Of course it does.
And how many come in.
Yes.
And how they come in.
And then what happens after they come in. Yeah, we were a nation of people. There's a great article somebody wrote on Substack the other day. Neo-Ciceronian Times. Neo-Ciceronian Times is the guy's title. And it was beautiful. And it was about the whole thing, that the LA riots, specifically about, hey, does Mexico, there are all kinds of myths. We've all been propagandized. And much of the bullshit we've been told about our own history is just that it's bullshit. And it's by the same people who want you dead, by the way, at least by political persuasion. So it's worth looking at, like, did Mexico ever in any meaningful sense control and make and build California, and then we stole it from them? Get the fuck out of here. Right. Who do you think built those aqueducts? The Mexicans?
Right.
Like, are you insane? Like, how little do you know of your own history that you could say something so stupid? But people are propagandized by this mythologizing about our history and this sort of, Mexicans were there. Mexico City did not make California what California is. In fact, the entire Southwest after the Treaty of Hidalgo, it was, you're not going to like it, but it was white settlers who did it. They came out here and they brought civilization. Some people know how to bring high civilization, and what people don't understand, I was talking to my wife about this recently too. Civilization like we have, high civilization, like you and I are here talking in front of microphones across thousands of miles, instantaneous video and all that shit, with all the things around us. High civilization, all of it is built on things that came before. Like it's all a stack. Technology is a stack. Civilization is a stack.
Right.
And in so many ways, I was trying to explain to my wife, like, just in things like, you don't appreciate how much of it we are what is known as a high trust society. To have high civilization, to have high technology, you have to have a high trust society. And that means there are things like, I was telling her, like, I don't spend a lot of time in Minnesota. The roads are a little different than in Kansas City. They have roundabouts, which is more like New England where I grew up. But even things like roundabouts, there's no signs except maybe yield, and you understand that the person in the roundabout has the right of way. If you're coming into the roundabout, you wait and let them go, and then you zipper yourself in. And like shit like that, like your life depends on it. People we're operating 2,500 pound steel or, composite vehicles at speeds that would render any of us a squished grape in an instant. And we do it right next to each other. People are, flying around each other. That's all built on a high trust society. Go to another country. And the real problem with Americans is most are so cocooned. The only places they travel are where there's more high civilization, or at least we've brought it by our tourism. We demand it. We bring our money and make high civilization, even in the places we travel abroad. That's why you can go to Cabo in Mexico, but not other places. You know what I mean? Like
I'll give you a perfect example of the trust issue. So where it was lost. If when the society trusts the police officers, the society is a very peaceful place. When we trust the police officers to defend themselves, and then it's a very safe place. The blacks in this country were propagandized, and so were the whites, but at the expense of the blacks, that the cops were untrustworthy. And you see it in videos every single day, the way they treat the cops culturally, black people, as opposed to the way white people do. And so they don't trust the cops, and so their communities are completely fucked. And when you don't on top of that, when we don't allow the cops to defend themselves, they can't defend us. And so, like, right now we have this society where we're not letting the cops defend themselves. Like, you should not be allowed to spit on a cop. If you spit on a cop, you should be tased, billy clubbed, handcuffed, and taken away. 100%.
Yeah.
If a cop's in the middle of an arrest and you point an electronic device at him like a phone, that's within 10 feet of him, you should be beaten. Like, you are interfering with something that we
Yes.
should be trusting them to do. And if we can get a 90%, if 90% of the cops are good, we're good. But for some reason, probably 98% of the cops are good. But for some reason, the media will not fucking get off their fucking back. Until we have cops we can trust, we're fucked as a civilization in regards to our safety. I mean, it's a classic example.
It comes back to what I'm talking about, which is high trust societies are built on a shit ton of operating assumptions that have happened. And like, if you can't just import people who don't have those same operating assumptions. Okay. That does not make a recipe for cake. And you can have, the compact was that we could afford to be a society with some immigration. And by the way, being against illegal immigration, this is another part of that statement that fucking pisses me off, where, the whole we're a country of immigrants. Yeah, we're a country of legal immigrants. You know what I mean? And even to the extent that you weren't, if you got here and you snuck in, if you made of yourself a productive person and tried to do the right thing and then got in line, or, ratified the conduct later, and you did all the right things, then nobody's like, even Americans, even people who are like maybe harder on immigration, more hard line, will say this: you can't have legal immigration and then say we're also going to simultaneously turn a blind eye to illegal immigration. It's just it's an absolute shank to the people who get in line to try and do it legally. And it can't be that the legal process takes 8 years and then you're given welfare benefits to those who just walked across and said fuck it. So like
welfare benefits, social security numbers,
right. So all of that shit is like, all of that is we've got big problems, huge problems, and they're coming to a head because, again, to come back to it, you can't import 7% of a population who doesn't share that common set. You're going to have what we have, which is you're going to wind up with no-go zones, money laundering operations, all the things. I'm sorry to say it, like Guatemala or whatever country, I don't know, I haven't been to Guatemala. Let me pick a country I have been to, but that country isn't a shithole because of Afghanistan, and is not a shithole because of the white man. I got some news for you.
Right.
It's a shithole because they haven't invented slanted roofs yet. They haven't invented that technology. And so they have flat roofs and they get standing water and they can't figure out why the mosquitoes are there and everybody's getting malaria and fucking dying. And they haven't invented the umbrella there yet. That technology never came out of that society organically, and yet on the other hand, they've got weapons and cars and weird tech, and so like shit like this happens, right? If a car breaks down in Afghanistan, it is immediately scavenged. Why? Like, even if it gets a flat tire, why? You know what I mean? Well, who's going to fix a flat tire? Where are you going to go to the fucking gas station? What gas station? You know what I mean? Like, people don't understand. There's all these things. When you see these discontinuities in other societies, you start to realize how your own is built and what's holding it up. And so certain issues, I used to be libertarian and probably would have been more, well, hey, cheap labor or whatever.
You're not libertarian. You don't view yourself as libertarian anymore?
Not even close. No.
What group would you pilot yourself in?
Oh, oh boy. How do I explain this one? I guess I would be more like closer to maybe Michael Malice as an anarchist.
And what's that? What's an anarchist? What are some of the traits?
I think government is illegitimate.
Oh, okay.
I think government's just the name we give to the criminal cabals who fuck us over. And I don't need them. They don't serve any purpose for me. I don't see. But everything that government purports to give me, I could find a better way, and we could find ways to agree and do it without the involvement of Gavin Newsom's
What about the roads that allow us to drive to the gas stations?
Right, because we didn't have roads before government.
Okay.
It's another fucking, like, just think about it. Try and think about it and think about which came first.
Yeah.
Just work your head, go back to, you know what I mean? Give yourself some time, think about it, you know.
Isn't the idea, hey, we all the government is the guy who organizes the fact. He's like, hey, everyone throw in $1, and then he's the guy who organizes everyone throwing in $1 so that we can build a road from my town to your town.
Right. Or we could all just get together, or we could have the property owners involved. I mean, they're private roads. You could just do it as needed, rather than some guy goes, well, we need a road. Well, why do we need a road? Who said we need a road? You know what I mean?
Let me bring up one more thing. What about defending ourselves against other governments?
Sebi, if somebody came to your house, if somebody broke into your house and I was sleeping on your couch, do you think I would fight for your family's life, or that I would be like, oh, not my problem, not my house, man?
Right. Okay. Yeah, you'd shoot them. We dragged them outside and go back to sleep. And you see that shit in Texas. Like, you know, there's that famous video from a couple of years ago. The guy came in, tried to rob a diner. One of the, patrons shot the guy.
Yeah.
And then everyone just kept eating.
Yeah. Hey, there's another part of our American mythos, like how we've been propagandized. It's called the Wild West. Wild West. We call it the Wild West, right? When this sort of state of nature, if you go look, somebody did this, the lowest gun death rates in the United States ever, the lowest homicide rates by guns ever was in the Wild West. Why do you think that is?
Because everyone had guns and
everybody's strapped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go into a gun store. You're gonna go in there and start talking shit in a gun store. I had this feeling one time. I had been in the Northeast a long time, and I went out to visit Greg. And the Northeast it's crazy. It's the birthplace of the Revolution, American Revolution. It's got the strictest gun laws. Massachusetts. I was living one town over from a town that the town in Massachusetts. I'm a Massachusetts lawyer. I was living one town over from what was the NRA had ruled the worst jurisdiction for gun ownership in the entire country. And it was when, I don't know if you remember when CrossFit, you could choose for your birthday gift.
Yep.
Choose the gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had picked, when I was working for CrossFit. So I was like, I want that 357, I had never owned my own gun. I always had one issued in the military. And so this is going to be my first personally owned gun. And what they put me through in Massachusetts to try and own a 357 was an absolute, I mean, I can't tell you, it took me over a year. It took me like 18 months, almost 2 years. They do all these things to make it as painful as possible. But anyway, there's a Second Amendment scholar who's written some brilliant stuff on this. But the lowest we've ever had of gun deaths was in the Wild West, and it's because everybody was strapped. Anyway, when I went to go get my gun in Arizona, I went into a store and I didn't have a gun, and everybody in there did. And I had been in the Northeast so long, for a moment, I was terrified. I was the only unarmed guy in a room. I mean, everybody's strapped, open carry. The guys behind the counter, the customers, there were maybe 3 of us in a room full of 20 people who didn't have a gun on. Yeah. And I'm like, I had this feeling like, oh, fuck, I'm naked. And then I kind of looked around and I realized any one person who pulls a gun, the first guy who pulls a gun, like if somebody pulls on me, there's 16 other motherfuckers in here who are going to drill that guy probably.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just out of like sheer, like, whoa, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And so I just, all of a sudden I went from being very afraid to like feeling like the blanket of comfort. I just realized like, no, I'm in the safest room in the entire country right now.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get over that because people have been propagandized to believe that, guns are like, they're magical talismans. That's why we call it only in a society so propagandized could you call it gun violence and not have people look at you like you were fucking an idiot.
I saw this stat the other day, Dale. I wrote this down, which was fascinating. Since 1999, there have only been 203 kids killed in school shootings. Since 1990, but listen, every year 600 kids die on the crosswalk in front of their school. So every year 600 kids get killed in crosswalks in front of their schools.
What, car accidents?
By car accidents, yeah.
Yeah.
But since 1999, only 203 kids have died in school shootings.
Yeah.
But it's the gun. But it's the guns.
Yeah.
It's fucking. It's
There's all kinds of things like that.
And you know what else is crazy? They act like they care. The highest suicide rate of kids kids dying from guns was during COVID in the history of the country. 2020 to 2021, they locked the kids up in their homes, and that's when they started killing themselves.
Again, understand that this comes back to what started us down this whole thing, where you said, and I started talking about, a guy who keeps bumping into you. There are these people who are doing this. There are people, a significant chunk of them are in government, have power, and they fucking hate you. They hate the good. And I see people talking more in religious terms and spiritual terms now, and you see people using that kind of language of like evil. But that is, people are waking up to the existence of bad, of actual evil. And that's really, I think, what the big sorting mechanism is now. And then if you can...
Do you have a definition for that, for evil?
Wow.
Because I always thought of that as an intellectually lazy word.
No. There's a real... If you haven't experienced it, I'll say this. So I was a criminal defense attorney for a long time. I'll tell this story. I was a criminal defense attorney for many, many years. But most of my clients, like all of my clients, were not evil. Like, I could find redeeming qualities about all of them. In many cases, they were, for the most part, the vast majority of people in the criminal justice system, or at least the military criminal justice system, were what I call situational criminals, for the most part. I'm not saying they weren't guilty. I'm not saying they didn't get themselves in trouble. I'm not saying they didn't make conscious choices that were fucking stupid and landed them right where they deserve to be. But I'm saying these were not, it's kind of like Paul Newman in Cool Hand Luke. Like, what did they get him for? What started it all that landed him in the bogey? Clipping the heads off of parking meters because he was bored. You know what I mean? Just like doing stupid shit.
All the bad shit I did when I was a kid was because I don't know if bored was the right word, but I didn't think. Like, I definitely, if my friends were like, "Hey, let's go chop the tops off of parking meters," I'd have been like, "Yeah," with no thought.
Right.
Yeah.
If your friends were like, "Hey, let's go drive my older brother's car and we'll throw bricks out of the window at mailboxes."
Yes, totally.
And it'll make a big kaboom and destroy someone's mailbox. And we'll do it.
I wouldn't even say someone's mailbox. It would just be a mailbox. Like, let's go to the new car lot and just throw bricks at cars and break their windows out. I would have never, I would have totally done that, but with no no thought of it being bad or good.
Yes.
I just would have done it.
Exactly. So, so for people like that, you're kind of like, okay, that's not, for me anyway, I'm like, that guy's not evil. Okay. So now one of the things you have to do when I was interning as a prosecutor in the military is when guys are in the brig, and that's a military prison for those who don't know. And there's one at Camp Lejeune, and that was a brig that still had, into the 80s or 90s, they still had hard labor, which is to say they had pictures in the base paper of guys breaking rocks with hammers, like in a quarry. So if you got
like cartoon shit, but real,
like if you got like Cool Hand Luke shit, if you got 40 days hard labor at the Camp Lejeune brig, you were out in the sun of the North Carolina fucking heat on a chain gang, and you were bam, bam. You were making big rocks into little rocks all day long. So anyway, Camp Lejeune was the real deal. There was a guy in the camp. So you have to do brig visits on behalf of the command. So the command doesn't want to deal with their guys they've convicted, court-martial. They're like, I don't want this guy. It's not a problem. We're going on deployment. So all the commands offload that to the prosecutors and lawyers. So we have to go over there and visit their guys. That is to say, their criminals, and go check on them. And, there's a Marine Corps order about things you have to do. Ask them about, make sure they're getting their mail, make sure they're getting their pay, chow, whatever. If they, any of the things, make sure they're taken care of. You still got to treat them. They're still Marines, notwithstanding the fact that they're in jail and convicted. And anyway, there was a guy over there for this command that I had to go do a brig visit for. And he was in there for he was doing a stretch of 20 years. And he was waiting to get transferred. He and another is a Mexican or some Hispanic, I don't remember.
So you sign up for 4 years to be in the military and you get in trouble, and now you're 20 years in, but in jail.
Well, yeah. But he was what's interesting, the guy was like a staff non-commissioned officer. So this guy's been in the Marine Corps for like 12 years, 10 years. Him and another guy, and they're in combat arms. I forget what, I think. but they were out doing convenience store armed robberies, strong armed robberies.
Wow.
And he executes a couple people behind the counter. And then he turns evidence and says, that guy, the guy who's a little more senior, says he's the guy who ordered me to do it. And that guy goes down. And so it was a big deal at Camp Lejeune at the time, because this guy had pulled 3 people behind the counter, 3 people anyway, killed them. And the other guy wound up taking the fall. And he immediately cut evidence. Anyway, I went over to see this guy. And man, I was like, that guy was a malevolent force. That guy was evil. That guy was dead.
You just felt it from him, looking at his eyes and him.
Oh, bro, I didn't want to go in the fucking cell with him. I was like, everybody else, I'm like, I'm not afraid of these fucking guys. I'll go in there. I got to the cell, and that guy looked up at me, and I was like, I ain't going in there. No chance. I was so happy. I had these giant Marine guards with me, but even they were like, yo, man, that guy. I mean, I don't know what else to say. You encounter it. I read a great article.
The only thing I can think of is I knew some people who were on meth who were like that, just dark.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, man. When I was a kid.
Yeah, great white shark eyes. Yes.
Yeah.
The guy I knew who was a meth dealer, he was so scary. His name was Pineapple.
There you go.
And he was scary as fuck.
Yeah. You know who was really good? You know, it's depicted really well. I think one of the best depictions of it is in Training Day, when they're playing cards with Ethan Hawke, and he realizes when he finally, like, he's like, where's Alonzo? He thinks Alonzo went to the bathroom. And then, you know what I'm talking about in that movie?
No. I
did you see Training Day?
I did see it.
It's the scene when Ethan Hawke is all alone with the Mexican guys, and they drag him into the bathroom. So they're going to blow his head off so that the tub, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it, they drag him and they're going to kill him in the tub. And they've got him in the tub, and the guy's got the shotgun and is going to blow his head off. And they're trying to contain the mess in the tub. And the guy who's like, he's also in Breaking Bad. He's the Mexican guy. He's amazing. But he's the guy who sniffs the meth and is like, tight. He's just yoked. He looks like he probably did 8 to 12 or whatever. But that dude looks like he'd kill you just as soon as he would wipe his ass in the morning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a kind of like, I don't know, there's a malevolence, man. It changes your view on a lot of things. I read a great story by a guy who was a prisoner for many, many years, long time. He used to do stick up like Omar. He used to hit drug things. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a great story about while he was in prison, about a guy broke out of solitary. And he said, and he's like, hey man, I've been in a lot of fights. I'm a big guy. He goes, but this guy walked by me. This guy was on death row. And he said, I never believed in God in my life. And he said, after that presence went past me, he was mopping the floor and this guy got out. And he said, I was like, oh, and he said, that guy was the pure incarnation of evil. And he said, it made me believe that if that exists, it couldn't be possible that there wasn't something to counter that there wasn't the opposite, because it was just I don't know what to call it. You know, it's like it's the anti-good in some ways. You know what I mean? It's almost defined by, it's one of the few things evil that I can almost define by the negation. It's like a black hole. It's like the absence of any good.
Yeah, they do see, the person I'm thinking of was like a black hole.
Yeah. Yeah, like no light.
No light.
I mean, I don't know how else. I mean, that's a weird way to define it. I know it's not good, but
I wanted to show you this video too. This is going back to the immigration thing. And there's lots of these. I mean, you can hear Clinton talking about the importance of mass deportation. But I wanted to show you this. Here we go.
Illegal immigrants being deported by the new administration, would you find objectionable? Mr. Melnick, I'll ask you, 1 million?
I think 1 million would be a disaster.
2 million?
Again, considering we're talking about law-abiding people who've been here for decades, I think that is enough that would have severe negative ramifications for the United States.
I'm not reading what Trump intends to do. I'm reading exactly what President Barack Obama did when he came into office and deported Nearly 5 million people are. So you said President Obama was immoral and inappropriate to deport those million people. Is that what I heard you say?
There were many people
it's a yes, no question. I would really appreciate it to say, if you would go out on social media and say that the President Obama did a horrible disservice to those people he deported, and he's as wrong-minded as every other Republican who said we've got to secure the border, deport people, because you can't have one being okay and the other one not being okay.
They called him the deporter in chief.
He was the deporter in chief. He was also the drone striker in chief. He killed more people than he cackled about it.
So what happened during this time? Were the Republicans against deportation? What happened? Why all of a sudden? Why isn't this like a bipartisan? Like, yeah, let's get these motherfuckers out. What happened?
Because that's what I'm trying to tell you. The people who have taken over the Democratic Party, here's what's happening.
But why do other people believe it? Why does like my mom and my dad, why aren't they like, oh shit, what the fuck's going on?
Here's what happened. Blacks started leaving the Democratic Party over time, notwithstanding everything that's happened. The welfare policies of the 60s, the Great Society policies, were actually intended to do what they did, which is to destroy the black family. And in so doing, destroy.
That was like a plan.
Yes. And it worked perfectly.
And why did they want to destroy the black family?
Because you want dependent blacks who vote Democrat, not middle-class blacks who vote Republican.
Okay.
And so what we are seeing now is blacks were leaving Democrats and have been slowly, as you get, for example, Chris Rock and all, Denzel Washington, they're not hanging out with gangbangers and, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Even, and all the NFL guys, even though, some of them keep their boys around and all that. The fact of the matter is wealthy black people aren't, Eddie Murphy isn't living his life like a rapper.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he's got, whatever. So he's living in a house up in, Beverly Hills and all of that shit. And as you get more and more blacks who are finding their way up into,
and all their accountants are Jews.
Yes, of course. Just like everybody's.
Yeah.
So it at some point it becomes harder and harder to sustain the mythos of whitey's keeping me down when you've got black millionaires and a rising black middle class. And those the Democrats coalition had always been built on sort of blacks, and it was always a coalition of like my con law professor was a guy named Jim Friedman, marched with MLK the weekend before he was killed when he was at University of Chicago. There was, and he pointed this out years ago in law school, that the Democrats had always had a coalition of various different things, unions and other. Well, as they pursued certain policies, and Clinton did a lot of this, which is they sent the Democrats were primarily staffed by one of the big chunks of their voting bloc was working class white Americans, like my dad. Like the Democrats were the party of the working man,
like my mom and dad.
Right.
Crazy, hardworking Democrats.
Yeah, exactly. My dad, my grandfather, everybody where I grew up was, my dad ran for office as a Democrat, but he still hasn't realized it yet. They're still hanging on with some of those folks, the boomers. But my dad doesn't know that party abandoned him a long time ago. You know what I mean? And I always wondered, it never made sense to me that Massachusetts had all these Democrats, a massive Democrat stronghold, where they're the party of abortion, and you've got all these Irish Catholics. I'm like, how are you voting? But it was always sort of look the other way kind of thing. Well, our politics aren't our religion. But I don't know how much longer. I always wondered, how could you be a pro-life Catholic, for example, in the Democratic Party? As that party continued to move and drift away from working class union supporting, and look at now, we're at a point where Trump has really captured the union vote, the Rust Belt, all that stuff. And what happened is the Democratic Party shifted as blacks started to move away, and that meant they had to replace those voters. They weren't, as they lost working class whites, union folks, they needed another strategy. And what is that strategy? And the answer is import more voters. That's why they're pushing for legal status. I mean, it's so obvious. Elon said it was the first thing he was saying on Twitter was like, oh my God. He was like, they're importing voters. You know, he was like, this is to make a permanent electoral majority for the Democrats. And by the way, they had been openly talking about that. That had been discussed as the Democrat strategies back in the 90s. They talked about when Obama won, Democrats were talking openly. You can find articles about this, that the Republicans would never win another election, that the Democrats were demographically ascendant. And Trump took a shit on that whole theory and recognized that what was happening was like, you can't have these people, that all the cheating. I mean, we all know now, Joe Biden did not get 80 something million votes. That, you know what I mean? Trump won 3 elections. He only got to serve for 2 of them. Let's all just come to grips with that. You know,
have you heard this stat? It's very interesting. If we only allowed blacks to vote, Democrat would be elected. If we only allowed women to vote, a Democrat would be elected. If we only allowed gays to vote, a Democrat would be elected. The only demographic, if you let them just vote, that a Republican would win would be white males. Yeah. But all of a sudden that's shifting. Like there's chunks from all those demographics, the blacks, the women's, the gays, that are like now are shifting and being like, wait a second.
It's always a matter of numbers. Elections have always been about, you know, you don't have to win. You're not going to please everybody, but you have to win. If you can dig into the other person's, their supposed base, you know, their supposed, like the thing that's going to get them across. If you start taking a chunk of what is supposed to be their like wheelhouse, they've got problems. And that's what happened. Of course, the truth of the matter is Trump was never a Republican. He was a moderate Democrat. I mean, when I was living in New York City in the 80s, Trump was a fucking Democrat. I mean, that's why those pictures of him with the Clintons exist. Trump was a blue dog Democrat. He was a Clinton Democrat. That's what he was. I mean, he hijacked the Republican Party.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wouldn't even say he's a Republican now. I heard someone call him, he's part of a transformationist party or something.
Yeah, yes. And I'll tell you, my lobbyists have written, one of our lobbyists wrote a very good article about this. If people want to read it, he tracks all of this, that Trump is part of is a populist president. And so he's not an ideologue. He doesn't have an ideological bone in his body. Like, he doesn't care one way or the other. You know what I mean? Like he's not a dogmatic, like he's not William F. Buckley. He's not, you know what I mean? He's not a country club Republican talking about this or that. Like he doesn't have any ideology on any of that stuff. He's not an ideologue.
Pat Lang, let's come to grips that Dale's retarded.
If he believes what that Joe Biden got on the election.
Hey, Pat,
come on.
If Dale's retarded, then everyone on this show, who's every guest on this show before Dale, I mean, seriously, that's like that's weird, dude. To refer to Dale,
I know it'll bum me out, man.
Except extremely high IQ and very logical. He's the smartest guest ever to grace the Sevon podcast. Go ahead,
Pat.
Dale.
It's an unfortunate thing. None of us wants to come to grips with is that our and I know this intimately because my partner was involved in 2020 election litigation, and I promise you, sir, that election was not legitimate. And you could argue that a lot of the elections haven't been legitimate for a long time. Not if you want legitimate to really mean something. And I can tell you, if you don't believe me, Pat, I'll tell you this. If you want, Pat, send me an email, send Sevy an email, and I will send you link after link after link to news stories from 2000 or the 1990s through now of government officials who have pleaded guilty to fixing elections. All across the board, like Chicago alderman pleads guilty to fixing, taking money. Rod Blagojevich. I will provide you with link after 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 link, a news story of incontrovertible evidence of people pleading guilty to fixing elections at every level, from the federal, and I'll also let you know there's no Santa Claus while we're here, Pat. So you're just going to have to come to grips with some hard truths here. There's no Easter Bunny.
Daniel, I want to tell you this too. Have they won any cases? Here's the issue too. You have to remember, when they say that no judge sided with Trump, you have to also say about that no judge would actually hear the case. They
Yeah,
weren't
that's
they weren't
another
they
not
weren't even
true thing. You know, like another one. These people here, you can tell people who are brainwashed when they say things like, "Have they won any cases?" I'm like, what do you mean by won? And what are you willing to accept as a win or a loss? Like I just told you, there are people who have already pleaded guilty to fixing pieces of the 2020 election. That's been done. There are people who've demonstrated in court that, you know, the vote machines can be hacked with a, you know, friggin' paper clip and a thing of gum, you know? So like, what more do you want? Or do you honestly, you're going to tell me that Joe Biden got more votes than Barack Obama? You're going to go with that. You know, like a guy who was losing his own primary. You know, like, and the thing is that, and all of the things, like, have you watched that? What was the one that Dinesh D'Souza did? They have the video of these people in these drop boxes with giant things.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to deny so much of what we watched with our own eyes. We watched vote totals flip in real time. I was like, wait a minute, how did Trump go down?
I remember the vote.
Like,
yes.
I was like, he was just at 2.81. How did the fuck?
Hey, how about this? How about how none of the machines by law were allowed to have internet ports? You weren't even allowed to have ports on the machine where you could hook them up to the internet, and they all had Cat 6 ports in them. Yeah. And that right there was very disheartening.
We're all told they weren't connected to the internet, and then it was like I don't know. It's funny. Look, I know people don't want to believe it, and I'll tell you, I think people don't want to believe it because
it's scary. It scares them.
Yeah,
it's scary.
Yes. It's not. It makes all of this very, very different. It makes the world a different place than you think.
Dale, you were in the National Guard?
I was on active duty in the Marine Corps, and then I was in the reserves.
Oh, and what's the difference between the reserves and the National Guard?
National Guard is you belong to the state. You're a state. I'm a member of the Indiana National Guard, whereas I was a member of the U.S. Armed Forces, but the reserves. So the reserves are like, I was in the Marine Corps Reserve, nothing to do with any state. I wasn't in the.
Okay, and is the president the commander in chief of the National Guard also?
He can be if he activates them. Their commander in chief normally under Title 32. This is in the Constitution. It's in the militia clauses, but the president can call up the National Guard in time of insurrection or rebellion. And there's a couple some constitutional triggers where the president can call up the National Guard, and he has to, what's basically what we call federalize them, which is to say they go from being in a Title 32 status. They are also a reserve of the United States itself. So he can call the National Guard up and then make them federal forces. And that's what happened in LA. Happened before too in 92.
So what I'm hearing is that there's a California National Guard, and Trump said, "Hey, we need you to go to LA and hold down." And then also 700 Marines are also being sent there or have been sent there. And the National Guard thing is being contested by Gavin Newsom.
He says he's going to sue over it. And I'm like, that case is going absolutely fucking nowhere. He has no case.
What I heard is that a judge
can call up the National Guard. He can federalize them, and Gavin Newsom can do nothing about that. Nothing. I mean,
what I heard is that a judge said that he's not going to decide on the case yet, but as of now, it's fine. Proceed.
That case has Gavin Newsom has absolutely 0.0000 chance of winning that fucking case.
And if for some reason, let's say he were to win it, would it matter? Could they just send in the U.S. military into L.A.?
He is not going to in that case.
He's not.
The Constitution assigns to the president the authority to call up the National Guard. And there isn't a court between here and the Supreme Court that's going to gainsay the president activating. Never has. No court ever has. You hear me? Pat, no court ever. While many, many courts have found people fixing elections. Many, many, many. Pat, do some research. Hey, let me give you a quick example of this while we're on this. When Hillary Clinton lost to Trump, she claimed that it was bullshit, that Trump cheated.
Yeah.
And so you know what they did? They went back and and what happened was Jill Stein, people won't remember this. Jill Stein was a third party candidate, Green Party candidate. She got like 1% of the vote, 2% of the vote. So Jill Stein filed, basically the Democrats got Jill Stein because she's not going to go in Trump's favor. So she challenged the election and said, I want a recount in certain districts that the Democrats wanted her to challenge because they thought it might, if they recounted, it might flip Hillary's way. So like they went into Detroit. You can find news articles about this where they talked about, they started doing, so they pull all the votes from these counties. There were like 31% of the counties in Detroit. Hillary Clinton had more than 100% of the vote in those counties. You hear that, Pat? Did you hear that? 31% of the counties, you can find an article. I think it was 31% of the counties. And same thing in Philadelphia. So they challenged in all these areas. And
there's nothing corrupt about Philly. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? And all these areas, Chicago, you know, all these areas. And what they found was the courts were like, there's a statute that if you're not within so many votes, or if something like that happens, then your challenge is automatically tossed. And so she lost on a bunch of like this. These court cases exist. You know what I mean? And people, so when people say things to this, like this to me and go, well, he hasn't won any cases, nobody approved it. I'm like, what planet are you on? Like, I can tell you don't know it. You can't hear yourself being propagandized. You can't hear yourself being brainwashed. But when you repeat slogans without having done any actual research yourself, understand what's going, you're not speaking, somebody else is speaking, you're just a puppet. And you're just repeating something you haven't bothered to verify or dig into with any seriousness to say it with the confidence you do. And we all have that stuff. Ideological blindness, it's called. Guys right in there in the room and we can't see him. So yeah, do some digging before you so quickly dismiss.
I met Sevan in person. We looked eye to eye. He's short as fuck.
Yes.
I meant we are the same height. Listen, just
hey, who's tall? You and I are the same height, right? Or am I a little tall?
I think you're a little taller than me.
Oh, that's crazy. You are short.
I just assume everyone's taller than me. Listen, for everyone who's ever sees me in person, I'm like that chick. I'm like that really hot chick you see from 50 feet away, and then you get like 10 feet, and you're like, okay, she's still hot, and then 5 feet, you're like, what the fuck? Don't.
What happened?
Don't come close to me. Like, don't just like I'm totally proportional.
Meant to be admired from afar.
Yeah, I don't have any like dwarf or short person characteristics. If you keep it like 100 feet and you don't see me like walk by anything,
it's like that art. You know, it's like that art that Greg gets that you get further away and it comes more into focus and it's better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you need to get my full. The best of me is at about 75 yards.
Like I have rules. Like I won't even eat an ice cream cone in public because like then you'll have context and you'll see how little I am. You'll see that the scoop's as big as my head.
I want no possible reference. I wear a lot of black, a lot of blended shades.
I'm like I look like a Lilliputian.
Yeah,
I'm just normal, but I'm just like really
in
miniature.
In 92, Sevi, they called out. I was just telling somebody else about this. This all happened recently. When they said, hey, they're sending to the Marines. Now, what about the feds sending federal troops to thing? It was interesting. I ran into a guy. I was out in the West Coast in 93. So just not right after the LA riots next year. And after the floods in early 93. So I was out there for the training squadron and I ran into a buddy who I had gone through officer candidate school with, and then, basic school with. And then he went on to be an infantry officer. I went to flight school and then boom, we bump into each other on the West Coast. We're having lunch together. And he's like telling me about, I'm like, what have you been doing? He's like, I don't know, man, crazy as shit. He goes, I was here, and I think he was at Pendleton during the 92 riots. And he got like, they just grabbed his platoon. He was an infantry platoon commander, like a second lieutenant, first lieutenant, some shit. And they're like, get the boys, we're going to LA. And he's like, what? And like, all of a sudden, kaboom. And he said, we go to LA. He goes, I got kids in my platoon who are from those streets. He goes, and I'm like, and it was really interesting. He said to me, hey, he goes, I told my guys, I wouldn't let any of my guys touch their weapons. I wouldn't let them take their weapons out of the truck. He goes, I made them stand behind the National Guard guys where they're backing them up. He goes, I'm like, what am I going to do? He goes, my guys are Marines. He goes, we are trained to blow shit up, kill people.
Yeah.
That's what we do, to be lethal. He's like,
there's some videos on there saying like, hey, you guys better watch out. These fucking 700 guys don't fuck around.
Yeah, this is like, they're not meant, they're not cops. They are meant. Marines break shit and kill people, in large measure. That's what they're good at. So anyway, I was talking to this guy and I go, I go, wow, that's freaky. He goes, yeah. He goes, I told the guy, I'm like, hey, this violates posse comitatus. And I wasn't a lawyer. I was a pilot at the time. And I was like, what? Posse who? What the fuck are you talking about? I didn't even know. He's like, Posse Comitatus Act. He goes, and he was all up on it. Fellow Marine officer. And I'm embarrassed to say I had no idea. He goes, you can't use the federal military in a domestic law enforcement capacity. That's the Posse Comitatus law of 1848, I think, Posse Comitatus Act. And this is why I said in the beginning, there's a difference between the LA riots in 92 over a court verdict, and it's whether you like it or not, you go, oh, it's blacks rioting or whatever, but those are Americans, and they've got a right to, protest and, cause a little discontent. And hey, they're going to pay the price for it. But on the other hand, like those
I want to show you some videos. This guy, I think was Marine Recon. I think he may have also been a SEAL. He was also the CEO of Pat McAfee's company. I forget what this guy was in. This guy was in charge of the Blackwater group that got into all that trouble in Iraq. But this is
oh shit.
And he's been on the show, Jimmy Watson. He's a great guy. Oh, this guy also, Andy Stump called this guy out, and this guy told Andy, like, hey, dude, you better not call me out. You won't like what happens. And Andy then publicly apologized to him.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Here we go.
And at the height of my career in the SEALs, and told me I had 10 days left to get out of the Navy. That is unlawful command.
Hold on. Let me see. Here it is.
I genuinely hope they don't send 2-7, but if they do, just understand they are coming from the most unpleasant place in the Marine Corps. They're sending in pissed off Marines.
Spot on right here. LA, you better stand the freak by, son, because Chesty is coming down your pipe with one in the pipe. You understand what I'm saying? Just to go on liberty in the Marines, all right? The reason why we're so effective, just to go on liberty for the weekend, every Friday, you busting out a 10 to 15 to 20 to 25 mile hump. All right. Ain't no little sissy march. I'm talking about a hump. And if you don't know what a hump is, no one does. No one knows why it's called a hump, but there's no other word than hump to describe the horrendousness. It looks like your feet have been skinned and filleted alive while you're walking through Tijuana at 18 years old, going to buckets for more beer. All right. You can't even move. So going to war is a reprieve from 29 stumps. They call it 29 palms. Man, you better stand by. These Marines are getting a vacation just to go deliver violence and heinousness upon your butt.
Is that hyperbole?
Look, this is a very, very delicate situation politically. But I will say again, and we saw this in Iraq. I mean, I defended guys charged with murder, guys, in Iraq for improper killing of the enemy. And so all I'll say is like, this is why presidents and politicians have generally been loath to use the military. And it's kind of become like de facto, then it became like, we won't even use the military to protect our own borders. And it's gotten so bad that now you've got, like we talked about, maybe 25 million people here. And you've got cartels and other outfits operating with impunity. And like the cops aren't,
they can't even defend themselves.
Yeah,
dude.
they're not. They don't have
been
the
completely
firepower
and they've been neutered.
Right. And
dude,
so
you can see two cops trying to arrest a black woman and 10 other black women beating them with sticks, and they're not doing shit. They're not shooting anyone. They're not spraying mace. They're not like, I mean, it's all over the internet. That picture I just drew you isn't like an isolated incident. You can find it on Instagram every day.
I saw one
completely fucking, they're useless.
Yeah. I saw it at the, I saw recently, there was a thing where I think it was Seattle. I saw one in Seattle where cops are trying to fight with one, and then all the people are like attacking them, and they're not. I'm like, wow, what the fuck? And
yeah, they should just unleash holy hell at that. Like if me and you are a cop and you're arresting someone and someone hits you from the back, I shoot them.
Yeah, right. But no, it's going to get interesting. It's going to get spicy, and I think what's going on, why you see people fighting, is that somebody suggested on Twitter. I saw something where they were like, why this is being fought so hard, because part of it is like, why are they doing this? Like, why are the Democrats standing up for people who aren't even here legally? Like, how the fuck is that? What are you thinking? You know? And but the suggestion is that a lot of, you know, their operations rely upon outside help, which is to say, you know, cartel money and all that other stuff.
I'm gonna show you 2 videos now that are popped up in my Twitter feed this morning. Here we go. Watch this one. I'm gonna show you 2 of them.
Oh yeah.
For $200 a day to go protest ICE in New York. The organization was called No Kings. They said June 14th we're gonna be protesting, and these are the streets that you need to be on, and this is what you need to do. You need to cause chaotic disruptions, and they said that there's going to be pallets of like bricks and different things.
So I'm like, okay, this is bullshit. This can't be true. And then I get this one. Look at this one.
I think I know which one. This might be the one I saw. The picture of the pallets of bricks.
Is this what? So I'm going to be honest with you. The protests don't seem very big to me. They don't seem like LA riots to me. They seem small, like they're not getting the kind of traction that I've seen riots get in the past. But so it makes me think everyone's paid. Let's watch this one. Another one.
When I was out in Los Angeles protesting the ICE deportations for the past few days, besides the fact that I got paid $150 to do so per day, I kept seeing signs everywhere that this was being funded by somebody much higher than the person that I had met. For instance, they would give us certain streets or certain targets to go to, and on those streets, there would be pallets of things that could cause destruction to the community. I am not joking.
This goes on and on. So these are like French Foreign Legion. These are paid mercenaries.
Yeah. And then again, I'll tell you, somebody wrote something really interesting. They did an analysis and they said they were comparing like arrests and destruction and all this stuff. They go like, they had this metric and they show where they came up with it. It's really great. It was like, let's call George Floyd like 100. And then they were like, okay, so we'll call the Summer of Love there, the George Floyd riots. We'll call that 100. And then they, you know, gave ratings based on all these different metrics, you know, how many cars burned and, you know, what they can find from all this reporting. These current riots are just gay by comparison. Like on this metric, George Floyd was 100. If the George Floyd riots were 100, these current ones didn't add up to a 1.
Yeah, like when I was a kid, the Rodney King riots, I remember like 47 people died, and it was like no big deal. I mean, it was just they were like, "Yep, people are dying, people are getting beat in the streets."
They dragged that guy out of the truck. We all watched Reginald Denny get his skull stoved in.
Yeah,
you know?
This seems
gay, fake and gay.
Yeah, theatrical. How come all the small businesses aren't being burned to the ground? And
well, you know,
is that because this is completely forced and there's not really people behind it?
Yeah, there's people behind it. The chick who does the deaf gal who does the Data Republican Twitter page, she actually posted up a searchable database, and she's got a whole bunch of things about like, here's who's funding it, here's the amount. She shows the money flows. So you can pull that up on Twitter, pull up Data Republican right now. She just had it. I just saw it this morning. She had, here's the list, comb through, do your own research.
Let me show you one more thing here real quick. This on the right is a black single mother in New York City.
Oh yeah, I know it. Yeah, I saw this one.
Trying to fucking get to work. This is some lesbian and some granola boy.
Right.
And these people are having their children taken and their parents. What about my kids?
I thought they were supposed to protect the black single woman. I thought that was like high on the victim class.
Again, never take the words. The words are only intended to be a cover for, it's like if I punched you in the face and you were like, what are you doing? And I was like, what are you talking about? And then I punched you in the face again. You were like, what are you doing? And I was like, what are you talking about? I love Armenians. You know what I mean? Like,
that's exactly what it is. I thought they're supposed to love the black woman. They won't even let her through. They won't make an exception for her. I thought she's the part of the protected class.
It's about making your enemy suffer. And so it doesn't even, like, this woman's like, yeah, I'm a black woman, you know, like, I thought you were, it's like, no, we were told to come here and make people suffer. And you can't even see the person in front of you there. It's what I just said. I just said ideological blindness. You can't see the person in the room. They're right there in front of you. That's what I'm talking about. Right
is this why is this why they're all flipping too, you think?
Who's flipping?
Just people like the blacks and the women's and the gays. Is that why they're coming to the Republic? They're coming to Trump. Yes. They're like, wait a second. Like even one by one, they're having these.
Yeah, even people who agree with you, that woman's probably like, yeah, I'm all for it. And then it's like, but I need to get my kid. And then you see what the protesters are doing. Like, no, you fucking idiots. Like political ideologues are the worst. They're the worst. They're zealots. In the same way as like we used to, you would make fun of, and Monty Python made fun of the guys who are walking around and they're flagellating themselves with the whips, or they're smacking themselves in the head with the boards while they're chanting. This is the same thing. It's just the modern version of it. That's all it is.
I started following Data Republican this morning, and for some reason it won't pop up in my. Oh! I see. Never mind. I'm on. I was on the wrong social media platform. Data Republican small r.
Yes. Yep.
So she's traced showing where the money's coming from.
Yep. If you search, it's Data Republican with a small r. Yeah. And a bunch of people have gone after. Yeah, there you go. Small r. Yep. I just got it. Just released. Follow the money behind the No Kings rally. An entire interactive open source map showing how your tax dollars flow to organizations involved in the No King thing. I tracked federal funding from federal sources to final recipients, prioritizing direct paths, not via DAS whenever possible. Most paths.
This is crazy. Yeah. This is money ending up in the Chinese Progressive Association.
There you go, buddy. Yep.
Oh my God, these are hundreds of millions of dollars.
There you go. Now you're finding out that it's big business.
Through the World Wildlife Fund.
There you go. There you go.
Wow.
See, Pat, this is the kind of homework.
They're not even really trying to hide it. This is like a kid hiding his sandwich under one blanket.
Pat, this is the kind of homework I do. Pat, do you see what I'm saying? You're reading this? See what I mean? This is what I do with my spare time. You got to know where to go, where to look, who to trust, you got to check different sources. It's a lot of hard work, man. And it's way easier to believe bullshit that already confirms to what your preconceived notions are anyway.
What is Pat just in denial? Like it hurt. I mean, I think he's surrounded by liberals in like his whole family's liberals. So he's just in denial. It's just hard.
Yeah, it's hard. Hey, it's the same thing like if you're around people who all eat carbs, right? How hard is it to stay on a good diet?
Or the really crazy one is abortion, right? Like coming to terms with the fact like, oh shit, I've been voting for baby killing. 70 million babies were killed, and
It's the grip that the Democrats, it's part of the psychological grip that the Democrats have on white women is on the abortion issue. It's a psychological tool that keeps them on the reservation.
And I guess once you kill a baby, it's really hard to flip and look at it honestly, right? Then you spend the rest of your life, and you would have to be you would get humbled. You spend the rest of life defending that and villainizing anyone who's against it.
If you flip, you have to get on your knees and beg forgiveness.
Yeah.
You have to.
You're five abortions in, and it's like, man, the flipping the switch. You might have to make a whole life of being pro-life after that, just to try to compensate.
At the very least, you're going to have some very, very uncomfortable conversations with yourself during that ayahuasca ceremony.
Yeah.
I laugh because it's tragic. I mean, I hope anybody would find that, but yeah, I'm just telling you what's going on in the progressive, part of what's going on is the abortion, why it's so important for them is not even for the numbers or anything like that. I mean, it's the psychological grip that and by the way, it works on all kinds of women because it works really well. like the sexual liberation naturally feeds into abortion. And so all of that feminism, it goes hand in hand. That goes hand in hand. You know, I'm sexually liberated. I can do everything a man can. I'm just as capable. I can work, hold a job, you know? And I mean, you see some of those memes that are funny. Like, imagine convincing a woman that the most important thing she can do is be a tax mule and be just like a man, which is to say, go out in the work world and have to deal with all that bullshit rather than raising children and being married and, you know, caring for the kids and all that. Imagine thinking that liberation was in the other way. You know?
Or that it's even offensive to they see it as offensive or misogynistic to suggest it.
Right.
Which is just a blatant attack on women to say that.
And of course, again, look at all that goes with it. Like, you know, by your fruits shall ye know them. You know, look at all that goes with it. Like the Democrats, or at least that party, what's left of it, what else are they the party of? In what other ways are they supposedly about this feminism and liberation? And so what else are they for? Trannies.
Yeah.
True. Men punching women in the face, men dressed in wigs, punching women in the face is again, a complete violation of women, a complete, and you've got women who run screaming to it, liberal women particularly.
It's crazy that people also kind of refuse to acknowledge natural law.
Yeah.
By that, I mean that's what women do. They make babies. They're different than men.
Right.
Men get in car accidents and drive too fast. Brianna, here's the thing. Why is it important? It's because I believe in bodily autonomy. The bodily autonomy is not the issue. It's the fact of killing the babies and justifying it. That's the part.
What does government power? What does government power have to do with you getting an abortion? Where's the government in that equation?
Well, they're determining whether you can do it. People can practice it legally or not.
Oh, you mean the disincentivizing? You mean the government saying, "Hey, you shouldn't kill that unborn child"?
Well, and that's a good point too. I see what you're saying. You're saying that basically millions and billions of dollars have been spent to incentivize women to kill babies.
Right, of course, and to brainwash them into thinking it's liberation. Jesus,
as if it's some sort of right. You're not even saying make it legal or illegal. You're saying that the government's been incentivizing it, which is true.
The federal government's been paying. I mean, are you kidding me? How about this? Watch how quickly Planned Parenthood goes the way of the dodo if we take away federal funding. You know what I mean? Why am I paying for it? If it's, you know, you want government out of it, then why the fuck is the federal government paying for it? You pay for it. You want to murder babies? You fucking pay for it. Why do I have to participate? You know what I mean?
I want to ask you a really superficial question.
Oh yeah. This is interesting.
There's a guy here I want you to see that. Now I've done no research into this guy. I just looked at his photo. RFK just appointed 8 new members of the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee. I don't know if these people have any actual power. He says the goal is to restore independence and transparency. So you go down this, and you see this guy, great guy, Robert Malone. And you see this guy, and you see this guy. You see this lady. I think that's a lady. This dude concerns me a little. Now listen, I don't know anything about this guy. Dr. Michael Ross, an OBGYN. That's as far as I got. I haven't read past that. And then I looked at his eyes and his mustache, and he's experienced on CDC cancer prevention panels. Do you know this guy?
No idea. No,
okay.
Never seen him before. And by the way, I would say I have the same physiognomy concerns that you do.
Yeah, like, hey, dude, I don't mean to pass judgment on you, but
right, you might be a wonderful human,
but I am.
But I'm gonna have to do a background check.
Like, hey, dude, you ain't touching my wife's pussy, and my kids can't be around you. Like, from just how you present, I just my spidey sense went off, and the OGBYN, I just like, okay, so your spidey sense goes off a little here too.
Yeah. Physiognomy is kind of like, it's funny. I mean, you don't want to rely on it 100%, but on the other hand, there's a reason that we have relied upon it. Is that there's a reason it sets off alarm bells for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And this guy looks like who's the guy who was fucking Angelina Jolie and they had the blood around the neck? Billy Bob Thornton.
Billy Bob Thornton.
This guy looks like fucking like he's Billy Bob Thornton from another
Martin
dimension.
Koldorf. I think he's been at hasn't Koldorf been at one of Greg's events?
Maybe.
He's a great Barrington Declaration guy. He
is?
Yeah. Dr. Marty Koldorf was yep. But he's got a little bit of the Joker smile going on there.
Did you see Bhattacharya was he was on he just did a podcast with someone, but basically I think it was 4.5 hours long. He basically said that MMR vaccine, there's no data showing that it's dangerous at all. Measles, mumps, and rubella. And he was using a Danish study. But the thing is,
here's the
point. Measles on their own. There's also the question whether vaccines are dangerous or not, or them mixing with other things, or fucking with people's immune systems. Yes. But the thing is how I don't think you can. How do you deploy 1.4 million or whatever it is measles injections a year and not just think that there will be enough human error in there to cause the damage? I mean, you know about like the first 150,000 doses of the polio vaccine spread polio. They were fucking.
They were not attenuated. It's called the Cutter incident. I think I might have talked about that on here before, but the Cutter incident gave people polio. They did not attenuate the virus. There are all kinds of problems, and in fact, the National Childhood Vaccine I forget what the Immunization Act or whatever it is. That whole act is premised on the idea that and giving sort of this immunity to vaccine companies, all premised on the underlying assumption that forced vaccination will harm some fucking people. That not everybody, like we're all different. You know what I mean? Like, let me give you an example of this. Young black men have something at about 10% of the black population has a cousin. It's a genetic recessive trait called G6PD deficiency. G6PD deficiency. You can look that up. About 10% of young black men have this as an inherited trait. And they are told, they should be told by their doctors, they used to be told at a young age that they had to be very careful about vaccination and how vaccinations would interact with their G6PD deficiency. It's a non-fatal cousin to sickle cell anemia. So it's a kind of a lesser related genetic malformation. There you go. Yeah, 1 in 10. Look at that. Dale pulling it right out of his ass. Okay. So you got to be careful. So whenever somebody goes, so I had a Marine who, this is anthrax vaccine, and they're like, we're going to give you the anthrax vaccine. So he goes to his corpsman, his doctor, the guy, his trusted medical advisor, and he's like, hey, what's any research on this? Because he knows he's got G6PD deficiency. And they go, his doc does all the research and goes, no one's ever done a controlled study on G6PD deficiency in the anthrax vaccine. Nobody even thought to look at that. And the guy is like, well, then I'm opting myself out. Thank you very much. If you haven't even looked at it, you're telling me I have no fucking idea what the interaction will be between this vaccine and your G6PD deficiency. He's like, well, I'm a perfectly healthy guy, and I don't plan on getting anthrax anytime soon, so I'm not fucking taking it. And of course, he got court-martialed and thrown in jail, and I went away weeping and crying and wrote a book about it. But I tell you this because there are all kinds of things like this. I just pulled G6PD deficiency out of my ass. But there are, imagine across the entire 340 million people of the United States, how many fucking conditions there are like this. Now ask yourself, does it make sense to do mass vaccination in this modern era in which
for things that really aren't killing people? Like how about no one who ever has gotten measles again. There's not one case.
Right.
Same with chickenpox. There's no one who's gotten chickenpox again. But there's a shitload of people who've gotten the measles vaccination and then gotten the measles, and same with chickenpox.
And people don't appreciate the other part. I think that I wish people appreciated is that there's like a whole bunch of steps between like a whole bunch of fucking steps between giving the public injecting people en masse with a substance
that they have to take, or else they don't get all the fucking their kids can't. My kids can't go to school.
Can't participate in society.
Let me just throw this in there one more thing. They didn't let Novak Djokovic play tennis in the United States, but they let in 20 million unvaccinated immigrants. Like, how is this a real world we live in? Anyway, go on.
It's not. It's the point is, part of it is the humiliation. It's if you can get away with, it's that old quote from the guy Greg loves, Theodore. Oh, it's a pseudonym, but he's like, it's easier to get over on people who have lost their moral probity. In other words, it's getting people to bend the knee in the face of clear absurdity isn't an accident. It's on purpose. That's the purpose that's how you know a people is defeated. You know what I mean?
When you have them believing that George Floyd was murdered.
When you can tell them to do all manner of stupid shit and they grumble and they groan and they fucking do it.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? That's a defeated people. Like if I were a conquering army and I came into your country, Sevi, and I was like, every motherfucker has got to get this. You got to inject yourself with this. I say so. And all the people are like, oh, that's bullshit. And they cry and there's a little thing. And then ultimately, and then you get people to go along and start like, yeah. And anybody who doesn't, we're not going to do business with. And yeah, that's a defeated people. That's a conquered people. That's what that means. You know? Yeah, and we're going to put men in wigs and have them beat up your women. And nobody will do anything about it. That's a conquered people. It's a people unworthy of, you almost might say unworthy of even trying to be morally, like, why would anybody fight for a people unwilling to, who would fucking lay down and allow such things?
Right.
You know what I mean? So in any event, the whole thing about vaccines is there's this big middle part where nobody talks about, which is just how hard it is in terms of like quality control, and like you have to check every lot and how they make vaccines and then retest them for purity. And these things are inherently unstable formulations. They're live
and very profitable.
and because of that, why? Because you don't have to pay for any of the liability, Sev. You don't have to pay any lawsuits out. You don't have to pay if you hurt them, even though in all of this process there, and the FDA is not testing, they're not doing any of this. Like when I got in deep into the anthrax vaccine, and I mean deep into the like emails from government military officials saying, hey, another lawyer that I knew had said something, made an argument in court, and then we got documents where military officials were referencing that guy's comment, and they were like, yeah, well, wait till he finds out. I wonder what he would think if he knew we were on the floor doing it. Like the military has been involved in this, and it's a shit show. And people, if you only knew how bad it was, like soaking the labels off of vials, and the FDA reports of condensate dripping into the vats and all this.
Yes.
If you had any fucking idea of how these things were actually made, you have in your mind, you have been so propagandized to believe that like vaccine is like, and it has this halo glow around it. And it's this pure substance from the gods that comes down and magically makes me into, you know what I mean? Like people, and they don't even hear themselves saying that shit, and they have no fucking idea.
And they let their newborn baby be injected with it right there in the hospital.
Yeah.
Hey, my dad when my dad first came to the country, he worked in a spice factory. And there would be, he worked at the top of this huge grinder, and you had this big wooden pole. And he said, then the pole would hit the blades and the wood would get ground up and go into the spices. And I said, anything else ever go in there? He goes, I lost a shoe in there once. and hey, dude, they don't stop the fucking machine
right.
and be like, hey, that's like no good. Hey, Pat, I want to show you something. And I want to show you something very interesting. So it says this year's modeling shows that there were 10 million cases of measles and 145,000 deaths, okay, in 2018 from measles. And so that's one source, Pat. If you believe that source, if you actually believe they can even test for measles. But Pat, I want to show you this right here. This is in the 10 years prior to the measles vaccine coming out in the United States, they were claiming up to 500 people were dying a year in the 10 years prior. So imagine, so 500 is such a low number that it could be just an error in the testing. It's just a fucking anomaly. So you're telling me you're willing to deploy drugs to every single person in the United States based on these 500 deaths that clearly we know testing is just fucking atrocious in the United States. I mean, dude, you call this mental gymnastics? You're fucking batshit crazy. And someone else compared it as, well, you take a risk when you get into a car. You're not forced to get into a car. You have a fucking choice. Anyone who's had a newborn kid knows that every time you go to the doctor, they're just pressuring you to fucking take those vaccines.
All they do is all they do. Look at how doctors act about vaccines. And then, of course, the funny thing is, like, I start talking to moms, more and more, and I got daughters and grandkids, and they're like, why do I need to, like, your kid didn't come out of the womb broken.
Right.
You know what I mean? Your baby was, for the most, like, unless you are one of the unfortunate ones he came out, but you'll be like, something's wrong with my baby. But they come out, they did not come out ill-suited for this world. You have been fed some fucking lies, tremendous lies. Lies. And that doesn't even get into, like, when you talked about Bhattacharya saying, hey, MMR is fine, like, there's no thing of injury. Those guys are part of that system, And, like, Jace seems like a nice guy. I've met him a few times. I know you've talked to him. But even still, everybody comes with this sort of programming that we've all bought into. And he's a part of that system. And he can tell himself all he wants, like, well, it shows, an MMR, it doesn't show any, there's no possible, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, what do you mean by that? Are you telling me that you believe that the data is 100% accurate and it captures everything and there's never been an adverse reaction and no one's ever had a problem? You know what I mean? Like, come on, you don't believe that. That's not true. That's not true. And so what you really mean to say is, I'm willing to accept a certain amount of suffering of others, and I don't give a fuck about it. It's what Greg said about the difference between herd management and it's the socialism. It's all of it is a mind projection fallacy. All of it is taking individuals and turning them into constructs in your head and then moving them around a board and you playing God. And it just, you don't want to admit that, but you're willing to sacrifice others.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like Greg said, herd management. It's one of his great analogies ever. He goes, herd management is, I find a deer and it's a little bit hurt. It's in my backyard trying to jump over the fence. And so I take it to the vet and he goes, oh, it's got a leg. I can splint it up and it'll be fine in 6 weeks. And then you should be able to release it in the wild. If you take it to the vet, right? He's going to help you fix that deer. If the forestry guy comes and looks at it, he goes, oh, well, it's got a broken leg. Well, you know what? We got too many deer this year anyway. So I'm just going to shoot it and put it down.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And the vet's like, hey, or you're like, hey, that thing's perfectly healthy. It just hurt its foot and it'll heal in 6 weeks and it'll be able to live. And he's like, well, the numbers on the chart say we got too many this year. So I'm just going to shoot it and kill it.
Right.
And that's what vaccination is all based on. And people don't want to hear that. It's the socialization. It's the turning all of it. All of you no longer exist as individuals. You exist as a construct in my head on a spreadsheet to be manipulated and thing. Because why? Because pharma needs its profits. And because you've been taught to believe that. Go look at all the numbers of when vaccines were entered and where they were entered in terms of where the diseases were at the times were entered. You've seen that chart. I know.
Yep.
Every vaccine was introduced after the underlying disease that it was supposed to cure had plummeted to such numbers that it was basically a non-factor anymore.
Yep.
And by the way, if you think that the pharma companies didn't know that when they entered if you believe that's a coincidence, you also believe that elections are fair.
But you know, another thing that's the common thread, which is crazy, was polio and COVID. It was the exact same playbook. One of the huge factors is somewhere along the line they changed the diagnosis.
Yes.
So with polio, they used to diagnose you in 24 hours, and then they switched it to a month. So if you're not following that, basically you go to the doctor and he'd give you a diagnosis of polio or not. And then they switched it to you come and see the doctor, and then you visit him 30 days later and they diagnose it. So of course shit plummeted because fucking 90% of the people or 99% of the people healed on their own. I don't know if you remember, the same thing happened with COVID. It went from if you have a cough to, oh, you need a cough, a positive test, and still be coughing a week later. And they just kept making it harder and harder to, and then it went away. And it's like, holy shit.
Well, the other thing you could look at was, I mean, there were all kinds of signs. That's why I was always like, Scott Adams can kiss my ass about, oh, nobody could have seen this. You couldn't predict this. I was like, no, Scott, people who were already brainwashed couldn't see it. Those of us who had kind of maybe lived through this once or twice already saw it coming a fucking mile away, predicted it, wrote a book in advance of it happening and told you it would happen.
What's the name of your book, Dale?
United States versus members of the armed forces. I'm writing it. I just got asked by somebody to write an update to it and to relate it to COVID. You know, when I wrote it, it was meant to be a cautionary tale, like here comes COVID, and published it. But the fact was, at the time, you couldn't mention COVID. Like they were deplatforming books on Amazon, and I just self-published on Amazon, but you couldn't. So I didn't mention COVID. But the whole point of it was to show, like, the anthrax vaccine was the direct precursor to what happened with COVID. Like the anthrax letter attacks, all of that that was all warm up for this run.
You should read before you write that book, Moth in the Iron Lung, and talk to I think his name's Forrest Mulready, the author of it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He wasn't the anti-vaxxer at all. He just wanted to, he was a historian. He wanted to tell the story of polio. And then by the end of the book, he's like, oh, fuck.
Yes.
Oh, fuck.
Seven, that is so much. People who don't know me, I can show you my shot card. I think I got it laying around here or something, my old one. But, you know, I was in the military for 27 years. You think they didn't use me as a human pincushion? I didn't come to it with some preconceived notion. Like, I'd already been stuck. I bought all of it, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
And then I had a case in which it was the essential thing, and I had to, you know, scratch and do the research, and you know, and then when I got, but I was like, oh my God, you know, I mean, I had the same thing. I was like, holy balls. Like when you dig beneath the surface, you're like, oh my God, it's so fucking corrupt. I can't imagine. It was so corrupt. It made me quit the Marine Corps. And I had a crushing career to that point. I mean, I was serious varsity football team. I'd been a Cobra attack helicopter pilot. I'd participated in the rescue of Scott O'Grady, that Air Force guy who got shot down over Bosnia. And this was when there were no wars, you know? So I had a bunch of fruit salad. We all looked like big fucking war heroes in the mid 90s, late 90s, when there wasn't much of that going on before 9/11. And like, I was on the, you know, path to being a fucking general. And man, when I discovered the vaccine thing, I was like, wow. Wow. And the other thing that was clear was that the higher up you went, the more it was obvious that there were people high up who knew, who clearly couldn't claim they weren't aware. It was like, oh, they fucking know. And that's the other part nobody really wants to face up to.
Dale, I shaved my arms last week and they look fantastic, like giant hogs. Have you ever shaved your arms?
It's a good, listen, yes, of course I have. There's probably nothing.
They made a jacket out of it. That's in the Smithsonian from Dale's arm.
Right. I shaved my arms. I lost 4 pounds. Of course I shaved my Hey, when I was leaving, I remember at least one time, and I might even still have pictures somewhere that I'm not going to share. But when I left Afghanistan, I had just like, bro, I'd been in Afghanistan for a long time, and I had let everything grow. And when I was getting on a plane to leave the country for the last time, man, I think I shaved my entire body. I was just like,
did you have long hair?
It was, you know, I mean, it was, you know, I had a haircut. Yeah.
Big old Jufro.
Oh yeah. And my hair grows like that chia pet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't grow long in the back. You know what I mean? Like Dave manages to, he's got like, you know, it kind of grows down, but my hair grows like in stereo. It's like,
yeah, mine grows like a fro, but then if you get past a certain length, it gets heavy enough to where it starts to fall straight. But it's a brutal path.
I can't get past when mine is out like this. I feel like that Chevy Chase thing, like Chevy Chase 6'5", 6'9" with the afro. You know, I'm like, I could probably get to like 5'10", you know, with the fro if I let it grow, but I can't do it. I can't do it. But yes, I have shaved my arms, and it does look, you know, if you get it all kind of like a good pump, and you got your arms. I mean, you can see you look like one of those guys. You're like that way to the beach, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I look halfway mateable when I shave my body. Hey, have you heard of this book? Greg just told me about this book, Sword and the Scimitar.
Sword and the Scimitar.
Yeah, have you read that?
I think I have, if it's the one I think it is, but there are a couple with that name.
Raymond Ibrahim.
14 centuries of war between Islam and the West.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read that one, but at least I don't think, but I've read some other similar books.
So Greg sent this to me last night. He's like, holy fuck, dude. And I said, what? He goes, you have to read this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's basically like, hey, dude, this is just a book talking about how the Muslims have been slaughtering Jews and Christians. That's their whole existence. He's like, and hey, dude, the Armenians play a big role in this book. He's like, you got to read this book.
Oh no, he's got you hooked then. All right, I'll read it.
He's gonna come back, and I think he lands today. Back from, he's been gone forever. I'm really. I was like, dude, have you ever been gone this long? What are you doing?
Yeah, we talked we talked a few times. He texted a bunch. I know he texted with you some too, but we talked a little bit. But I can tell he's ready to come back. And we're gonna try and get up. Ashley asked, we're gonna try and get up to. I already asked him, like, hey, I want to get on his calendar for Coeur d'Alene, but that's providing it's not smoked out.
Yeah. I'm trying to get. I was like trying to ask for an invite too. I was like, hey, so you want my family to, you know,
right? You want to talk about? Yeah. Well, all right. Well, let's coordinate our dates then. I'll send you what I'm thinking of. And
hey, I think he's coming to Santa Cruz for like a month first. Yeah, let's hang out if you can come out. Are you busy as all get out? Is shit crazy?
Crazy right now. We're on the verge of maybe getting a ruling. We've already gotten a remand on the Coast Guard guys, and you know, we sent out notice, and you may have been fucked. And then we're waiting on a ruling from the judge. He's ordered our 10 guys. It's interesting. The judges have said, hey, it looks like Trump's trying to fix this thing, so you guys need to go to the boards and let them fix it. But one way or another, we've got.
Would that be bad for you that if they fixed it?
No, it wouldn't be that at all. The issue, at least I don't think so, because the real problem now is we're starting to get to the point where somebody's like, okay, we got to fix this thing. But the problem is everybody has been like,
fix this, meaning we can't be forcing people to, all these guys got kicked out and we can't be forcing people to take untested drugs in the military.
Yes. And Hegseth has made some comments that are very, very helpful for our case. And at least we think. And so we're kind of figuring out what does that all mean, but they want to send our guys to the boards for correction to correct their records and say, hey, the military is going to fix it, which is all fine and good. If they do fix it, that would be wonderful. Our guys will get their back pay. The question remains, are they really going to fix it, or is this just something to kick the can? And then the other big part of it is, okay, what do you do with the other 30,000 people who need to go through that process? How do you hold open the door so that those guys don't blow past the statute of limitations? If they don't like what they get, they've got an opportunity for appeal. Who's going to protect their rights? Who's going to look after them and all that stuff? So there's a lot of work to be done yet. And it could be that I'll spend the next 2 years working on corrections through this class action case to get people's records fixed. But it'll be the first step in the process. I mean, it would be nice, you know, like if I got to work 2 years to fix everybody's records, but there's close to 100,000 military members who got, you know, had their orders cut, kicked out, pulled, bad paper in their records, you know, got fucked. And so people don't realize, you know, like what happened, but that was a big chunk. About 10% of the National Guard got shit canned. I mean, we are in a bad place. People have no sense of just how unlawful. Again, I'll say it again. I said it on Brett Weinstein. Your government has been at war with you. You don't realize it. You don't think so. It's the guy who's punching you at the bar, and you're trying to pretend that the guy's not, you know, pushing into you and knocking you over. You're trying to tell yourself that he just can't see what he's doing or whatever. While he's taking your money, slapping the drink out of your hand, and trying to wrestle your wife out of the bar against her will. You know what I mean? Like that's where we are. People just they can't get themselves to come to it yet. You know, my government loves me.
Well, I'm excited. I hope you get filthy fucking rich.
I'll be a platinum sponsor, Sevi. We'll see what happens. You know, the judges, the last thing they hate, the judicial profession and the legal profession itself doesn't like they're like the crabs in the bucket. They don't want people crawling out the top either. So there are and so there are mechanisms to make sure that you don't get too rich.
Have you ever had a pet crab?
We had hermit crabs when I was a kid.
I had this fish tank, and I had those. They're little tiny freshwater crabs, and you buy them at the pet store. And these fuckers, no matter what, they figure out a way always, and they climb and they hang out at the top of the fish tank. It's crazy. So every time I'd walk, and I'm always, as a kid, was terrified they were going to fall out and I was going to find dead. So I'd always walk by like 5 times a day and push them back in, and those fuckers would come up, and even if you had a lid on it, they'd figure out a way.
Yeah, they're super.
Like if it gets, I don't even know how they don't even have good shit for climbing.
No, they're like Spider-Man
shit. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense how they do it, but they are.
Yeah.
Sevi,
be honest, you had pubic crabs too. Oh yeah, that was great. I did.
Matt Burns going right to the right. Yeah, of course, Matt. Don't be stupid. Sevi knows all about the creams and the penicillin. Come on.
Yeah.
He's an expert. That's my go-to on that subject.
All right. Thank you, Dale, for coming on. Appreciate it, buddy. All right.
Talk
to you soon. Love you too. Yep. Bye. Dale Saran has a weekly show on the Sevon podcast. Make sure you check it out. He's great. My crab story is amazing. What a great, the greatest crab story ever. I want to, yesterday, Alex Gazan came on the show. I don't know why. I guess she didn't get the memo that, athletes aren't supposed to come on the show. I don't know if you guys know. I think I've told you guys a handful of times. Did you know that people wrote letters? Athletes' families wrote letters to Wilson and I think Blair and Ben, asking us not to allow us to cover those events. It's kind of crazy, right? There was a comment in here that I was tripping on, in a good way. Almost all the times I'm tripping. Oh, okay, here it is. This is the comment. Let me see if I can share this screen. This is the back end of YouTube. It says it's from a guy named Schmuckman9. This is in regards to the interview I did with Alex Gazan. Stefan, you need to be better overall. This was good, but dude, you need to filter, especially in the situation. Stop the shock comments. And someone wrote what? Yeah, what? And then someone wrote fucking Sevi 5013, and then bruh, only Sevon. So I went to 5013, and I knew. I don't know how I knew. I honestly, and I mean that with sincerity. I knew beforehand. Maybe she said it in her maybe she said it in her Instagram post. I got glass. You wouldn't believe some of the places I got glass, or she said something like that. So when she came on the show, she kind of said, yeah, I got glass in weird places. And she said something along, and I asked her, I said, did you get glass in your vagina? And she said, yeah. And then I asked her, did it get cut? And she said, no. I don't know if that's what that guy is talking about. I definitely don't do it for shock reasons. It's definitely not a comfortable thing for me to ask, but how are you supposed to be sincerely interested if you're not willing to ask uncomfortable questions? And like, dude, that's a powerful component to the story. Yeah, you didn't ask if it feels good. Yeah, that's a great point. I don't know. I just people project. It's so weird. People project all of this shit, like the shock comments. It's not a shock comment. It's an uncomfortable question, but it's like one of the most precious spots on the body, the kazoo, or as Taylor calls it, the slippery squid. And so if you got glass down there, I mean, she had glass in her eyes. Anyway. It was a great interview. Alex was great. When she first came on, I was really uncomfortable because normally I don't say hi to the person right until the podcast starts. But with Alex, I went on with her like 5 seconds before we went live, and I said, "Hey, we don't have to do this. We can wait till tomorrow." She said, "No, I'm fine." Because she to me, she looked shaken. But then after I talked to her a bit, I think what was going on with her face, why she looked like she was going to cry, is I think her eyes, she got so much glass in her eyes that her eyes were crazy irritated. So, Alex Kazan Alex Kazan wrote in the comments, to anyone concerned about the GoFundMe, we also have normal bills, which is where my competition money usually goes. CrossFit isn't like other sports where athletes are walking around making millions of dollars. It's very comparable to working a regular full-time job. Yeah. And dude, she's just a young girl. It's not like she has, I mean, she's out on her own and she's 22 years old. Like, would you have gotten health insurance or car insurance? Like, what would you be taking? Like, just imagine how unsophisticated her life is. She got married when she was 18. She's been trying to play an adult. Like, I'm 53. I'm still not half the adult she probably is. Because someone wrote in the comments they're asking for 100K. That's wild. I don't know. I don't think that's wild. I mean, I don't think that's wild. And maybe she'll get it and maybe she won't. But I mean, her recovery is probably going to be that much money. Donation show. She writes in here, donations are going towards rebuilding Jake's truck camper so he can able to work. I mean, you know, if the guy lives in his truck 5 months a year, you know that money's tight. Oh, and she even writes, if there's any money left that isn't used to the accident, I would gladly donate it to someone else in need. Yeah, it's crazy that she even has to say that. There's always an asshole. Why are there so many assholes? There's always a handful of assholes. It's an awesome interview. At least I really enjoyed talking to her. I thought it was cool that she came on. There's this dude there's this dude can't remember his name. Oh, here it is. I saw this and I was like, "Oh shit, where's this going?" This dude's name is David Gora. I think David Gora. I've definitely seen his name before in places. I don't recognize him. I don't necessarily recognize him. He's been around for a long time. I definitely recognize his name. And he had this video come out yesterday. And it's called The Sevon Podcast and the Problem with CrossFit Media. I was kind of like bracing myself for the worst.
All right, so I know I will probably get a lot of flack for this, but I do have to say that first and foremost, I love the Saran podcast. I think everything that they do as far as for the community, providing entertainment, coverage. It's by far the best coverage that you can get for CrossFit. But I think at the end of the day, they are biting more than they can chew when you look at everything that it is that they're doing. You know.
So he's saying they're good at what they do, but they're biting off more than they can chew. For sure. But I like doing that. But yeah, so far so good.
The Syndicate Crown competition that took place this past weekend.
Can you guys hear this, or is it too low? Is it even worse? Anyway, go check out the video. It was interesting. Basically, he's saying that more people need to be making stuff. So I agreed with everything he said. Like, more people need to be making stuff. No one needs to go away in the space. You know, I'm bummed that John Woolley has gone into fucking just pure. In jiu-jitsu they call it turtling. He's just turtled. You know, where you cover up, and he kind of turned into a weasel. The Talking Elite Fitness guys seem like they have just absolutely no passion left. Their shows, I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if the scene became too competitive for them, or if they're feeling sorry for themselves, thinking the space is toxic. I don't know, but they lost all their energy and momentum. Buttery Bros are still, I think, going strong, but I think that they played the populist game too much, and they kind of fell out of favor. And by the populist game, I mean, like, they were trying to do what's right and not be controversial and skate like this middle line. And I think there becomes a point where you can't necessarily do that. Let me think who else. Hiller's absolutely killing. His YouTube and Instagram are just on fire, and the quality of the content's amazing. Who else? Jason CF Media. Do you remember that guy? He now wears a suit, and I think he's in the high rock space. I don't know what happened to Craig Ritchie, but also there's people like once your podcast or your media is a money-making operation that you use to pay your bills, everything kind of changes. And maybe that's what happened to Craig. Like, he felt like the fountain, the well was drying up in the CrossFit space, so he had to pivot. Eric Wise, Be Friendly is single-handedly covering international CrossFit and disc golf. I listened to Brian's podcast the other day. I was one of the 106 people who listened to it. He was showering praise to Matt Souza, and he was showering praise to Matt Souza and Taylor Self and Andrew Hiller, which I thought was awesome of him. I'd be curious what his intention was to shower them with praise. He definitely has an intention, an alternative motive. But very cool of him. Still. Yeah, the thing that this guy David Gora is saying is that there needs to be more people, but there's this, and he doesn't say it explicitly, and maybe I'm just fully reading into it, but he's suggesting that for some reason they can't, or they won't, or I don't know, like, I think you could say that about everyone. More voices in all the spaces, yes. Everywhere and everything, talking about cameras, CrossFit, news shows. Pool boy, Brian is a good guy. I don't think that's a good descriptive word for him. He wrote me a text message the other day, made me think that he was back on drugs again, telling me that he knows somewhere deep down inside I'm a good person, and that he knows that I live with a deep, profound guilt or something like that. It was some crazy shit. It was like some shit that I would expect like a 16-year-old girl to write me who's gone through deep heartbreak, and was like doing very passive aggressive. No, no, I don't think he. Brian is an okay guy. Yeah, like a drunk text. It was fucking bizarro. It was bizarro world. It was the crazy. It's so crazy. He told me to stop being a dick and to use my show to glorify athletes. I mean, um, it was so fucking weird. Um, the final paragraph, he basically says, he's suggesting that I see him as passive aggressive, divisive, untrustworthy, and money hungry. And then I do see he's extremely passive aggressive. He's extremely divisive, and he's extremely trustworthy. Those are all true. Money hungry is like you're the farthest thing from money hungry. He wants to be money hungry so bad. Like I'm money hungry. He wants to be hungry so bad. He's just retarded. I don't think people understand what money hungry means. Remember when that retarded drunk guy called the other day and he's like, "Oh, we need to figure out a way to make money." What a horrible way to live your life. I was just, and I get it. Like that's like if you're a 16-year-old, if you're an 8-year-old kid, when my kids are like, "Hey, we want to sell lemonade so we can make money so we can buy toys." Like I get that mindset. But just imagine this. I was telling my wife this the other day. I was like, "Hey, you know what's crazy as fuck? I just thought of, and I have really smart parents, guys. But my parents wanted me to go to college. And so I applied to go to college as a communications major because I thought that would be the easiest way to go to college. I wanted to be a religious studies major, but my dad told me no. My dad's like, no, that's no good. So I applied to be a communications major because I thought it would be the easiest way to go in. What was my parents' mindset that they thought that I should be spending $50,000 a year to go to college for something that I wasn't deeply passionate about? I can't imagine supporting my kids to do anything that they weren't deeply passionate about. Imagine just going to college for the sake of going to college. I reflect back, I'm like, wow, we are in a world of retards. Hi, babe. Do I have to go?
Soon, yeah. The van needs some gas.
Okay, I'm done. Okay, I love you. I forgot. I was thinking like I had to leave at 12.
No,
okay.
They're done with gymnastics at 12.
Okay, I'm totally out of practice. Okay. I'm coming. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
All right, guys. Love you. Hey, the last chance qualifier is coming this week. I'm trying to hopefully I don't know when JR and Taylor Shut Up and Scribble Show is going to be fucking off the hook, by the way. Taylor is really fired up. Let me just call Taylor really quick. And if he doesn't answer, I'll call JR and find out when that show is. And then also we're trying to set up some shows about the last chance qualifier. Imagine being worried about money and not having kids. That's the whole thing. Like if you don't have kids, like you should not be worried about money ever, and you should just be working your fucking ass off chasing your dream. Taylor, hey. He didn't answer. Let me call JR. If you're friends with JR, you're like the luckiest person in the world. Just want to say that. Throw that out there. Like if you get to know who he is, he's like the wizard behind the Wizard of Oz, but he's like the good version. He's like the behind the curtain guy. Mysterious. Reliable. No one answers the phone when I call. These are fucking working class people. Fucking working class. Do I have red heels? Those are my heels.
Your call.
Son of a bitch. All right. I don't know. But look for Shut Up and Scribble. And then we're going to do some last chance qualifier shows that I think are going to be crazy fun. Hopefully we can get the athlete. Well, we can just like cold call the athletes and make it a wild show. All right, guys. Today is Thursday. I don't know what's on. Maybe Get What the Programming is on. I don't know. Oh, here's a secret text. Oh. Huh. Oh, yeah. Someone sent me a nice text. Makes me uncomfortable. Oh, we're doing Shut Up and Scribble today, but Taylor and Bryson got delayed again and don't get home until this afternoon. Want to do an update show tomorrow night, us four? A programming, I will do anything. Call me. Okay. Okay, cool. So it sounds like that there's been a delay. Oh shit, my wife's barking. All right, not barking. Suggesting I speed up. All right. Have a good day. Bye, guys.